Hello, this is Debbie McAllister, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I am so excited today to bring you my guest, Ellie Bell. Ellie is a certified life coach who uses her intuition to empower and support women to build unshakable confidence in themselves. She works with successful, heart centered women to navigate their journey of self discovery. Her approach incorporates her coaching skills, shadow work, emotional freedom technique, also known as EFT, breath work, and other healing modalities. She believes that in order to find wholeness, there needs to be an acknowledgement of all the parts of us that are not deemed acceptable by society. There needs to be a willingness to uncover the wounds and scars we gain during life, to understand the impact they have on our sense of being and the opportunities that open up when we're ready to up-level your life. She's had a successful career in sports administration for over 12 years, which included roles such as the head of marketing and comms and event director at Cricket World Cup. She originates originally from the UK, and she moved to New Zealand. Yay, Kiwis, in 2013 for her role with CWC15, where she met her now husband. Much of the work that she does today is inspired by her wish to create a better world for her two daughters. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Can't wait to see where the conversation goes.
Right? I know we've had a lot of pre-conversation here, folks. And so just so you know, here's your warning. We're going to be real, which means you could hear a couple cuss words. And so I just want, because I'm bringing out all parts of me and you're going to bring out all parts of you.
Absolutely.
And we're going to have the conversation. So if that bothers you, this may not be your episode, just so you know. So I'm really excited. And I really wanted to start us off and jump us into what you say here in your bio, with that you believe in order to find wholeness, there needs to be an acknowledgement of the parts of us that are not deemed acceptable by society.
Yeah, I'm so glad you chose that as the starting point, because it is something that I think probably underpins all the work that I do. We have been conditioned, we have been told by society, and I'm going to throw the patriarchy out there early doors so people know what we're talking about, that we have to be a certain way. Women particularly have to look a certain way, they have to behave a certain way, there are a set of standards that we've been given, and if we veer away from those, then we are not deemed acceptable. And because of this conditioning, it starts when we're, children, when we're really young. So we spend most of our teenage years, our early 20s, and as we're growing up and we should be able to express ourselves fully, we're desperately trying to hide away all of these things that we've been told we shouldn't be. And unfortunately, with that means we pack away some of the really amazing stuff as well. So I think it's being able to open everything up, know that there are parts of us that other people might not like, and being okay with that. And I have to say that's been a massive part of my journey, being okay with not always being liked by everybody, and being able to stand up and say what I think and know that somebody else might not necessarily agree with me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm still working on it. I can tell you that. I think it's a lifelong journey, because I think there's so much of us that, young ladies don't do that. Proper girls, or well-behaved,
nice girls,
not heard. Nice girl. Oh my gosh, the nice girls and the bad girls.
Yeah. Well, you're either one or the other, aren't you? You can't be in the middle or anything. You've got to kind of pick a camp. And if you pick the nice girl camp, well, you're basically spending your whole life desperately trying to fit an unrealistic set of standards. And if you choose the bad girl camp, well, it's probably going to be a lot more fun, but there are going to be a lot of judgments around it. So it's just, yeah. And I can't believe that we're in 2022 and this is still a thing. And you mentioned in my bio that my passion is to start to make change so that it's different for my daughters. I have a 5-year-old who feels like a 15-year-old sometimes, I'm not going to lie, with her attitude, and a 3-year-old. And seeing them as these like little tiny humans, and knowing the world as it is at the moment, knowing what I went through during my career, in those early days when I didn't have the confidence to speak up, there is no way that that's happening for my girls. So we need to find a way to change the way society views women, so that we can actually start to be bolder and braver and not worry so much about what other people are thinking. But it's a challenge, and I totally hear you when you say you're still on that journey, because I am too.
It really is a journey. And I think there's a lot of polarity with us. Like there's parts of us where, at least I'll speak for myself, is that that rebel that was there, didn't want to conform, but yet wanted to conform and wanted to fit into the societies, wanted to fit in. And so I had, which I just got this really huge image as an intuitive, so I'm going to have to say it, is that, so in high school, I had like a t-shirt, and this is the early 80s. I had like a baseball looking t-shirt, and it said, 85% angel, and something, along those lines, about 85% angel and then 15% devil. And I remember thinking, I used to walk around and parade around, like in high school, literally parade around, that we had a pretty big high school. It was like probably between 1,000 and 1,200 students. So it was really big, about 400 in our class. And I remember walking around because I was a nice girl. Like, what was I doing with this kind of, provocative t-shirt, for goodness sake? And I used to get so many comments about it, and then you think about like what people would say about you at that point, when you're young and so impressionable, and all of those traumas that trying to fit in, all the people, who didn't get invited to like the school dances, or, trying to fit into what is normal. Right. And look how different things are now. Like how much more pressure.
Oh my God. Like, and what is normal as well? I was laughing the other day. My 3-year-old was just being a crazy little 3-year-old, whirling around. I was like, hey, quit it, you weirdo. And my husband was like, don't call her a weirdo, because, people might, that word means something. I'm like, but I love weirdos. They're like my favorite sort of people. Oh, but other people don't see it like that. And it was just so interesting how words have these like real perceptions attached to them, and you have to be so careful with it. And yeah, I know what you mean about the pressure that is out there now, in terms of like, God, being a teenager with social media, man, am I glad that was not the case for me. I was able to completely screw up and, behave the way that I did without any evidence of it whatsoever, except the odd photo that I'm just like, whoa, that is not something that should have been captured on film.
Yeah, right. And luckily a lot of us didn't have, like if we were at a party or off doing stuff, we didn't take.
Well, they were so big, weren't they? You wouldn't take your camera with you.
Right. Yeah. I had a friend who I've known since I was about 12, I think. And him and his wife were moving, and they were coming from one part of the country they're headed out to Oklahoma. And I tell this to you, and you're, a UK in New Zealand, but, so basically they're moving pretty much across the country, and they stop in here to have dinner. And so we started talking about our shenanigans, and some of them were, oh my gosh, I'm so glad there wasn't any pictures, and hardly nobody remembers, right? Maybe like 2 people who are still around can actually remember these shenanigans, because they were pretty bad. I can't imagine, having all of that on social media.
Yeah. And not even just having the responsibility yourself of like taking pictures and stuff like that, but what other people might capture as well. God, I just think it's horrendous. Like, so much pressure on, making sure that you behave. And that's what I think is really interesting, how, we've got to, as I said, 2022, and that it feels like we're almost stepping backwards in terms of what's acceptable and what's okay. And I just find that fascinating, just trying to, people wanting to roll back the clock and change it all. Whereas it felt like we were starting to make some real progress, but progress means change and means things are going to be different. And a lot of people have a fear that different means bad. And that's something that I really believe we need to change our approach to. Why does different have to be bad? Why can't different just be different? And it's something that I've seen a lot in the work that I do. I've had, experiences with close friends and family. When people think differently about something, it creates that division and that divide. And that's not healthy. We don't have to pick a team. We don't have to just be on on one side in any of this. We can choose where we want to be in all manner of different things. And if we could be more accepting that everybody has a right to think differently, how much nicer would everything be? Like, everything's got so nasty recently. I really don't. I struggle with it. I have to say, I struggle with it.
Yeah, I do too. And then I sometimes let it impact me on my own choices, or, believing what I want to believe and how I want to make my life choices, like, I've mentioned it, and I think I mention it almost every time, because, about my age, but because I'm 56 now and I'm single, I've raised my son, and he doesn't live near me because he wanted to go up to Montana, cowboy country here, right? I'm down in Flagstaff, Arizona now, pretty recently. And I'm working towards something yeah, I haven't had a completely traditional lifestyle. I didn't get married to my son's dad ever. Spent 20 years with him, never was legally married. And it's only been, I would say, in the last 7 years, almost 50, that I actually would say that. People assumed I was divorced. And I would say, yeah, like, because
Much
of
more
social
acceptable.
more acceptable, right? Being in this corporate environment. What do you mean? Like, nobody had, only the bad girls had,
That 15% devil had that, didn't
right? And she had a good
it?
time. Let me tell you, that 15%, right? She was a lot of fun. And not sexually promiscuous, because look, I still feel like, why do I even feel like I have to throw that out there? Right.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't my wild times. It was just going and doing and seeing things, like, I want to go plan a trip, right? Like, where can I go now? And, can I go get an adventure van and live in that? Can that be my retirement plan? You know, why do I have to go off to some old folks home and not do anything?
Absolutely.
But I think it's all cultural things. And so now, how does this fit into the whole cultural norms when you think about spirituality?
Yeah, spirituality, it's such a loaded word sometimes, isn't it? It's one of
Yes.
those words that can either, people will go, oh, thank goodness we can talk about it and just be completely relaxed. And some people will go, oh my God, they're talking spirituality. I'm out of here. I'm not woo in the slightest. It's not my thing. It kind of polarizes people in many ways. But for me, I really struggled to kind of come out of the spiritual closet for a number of years, because I couldn't make sense of how I could be somebody who enjoyed swearing, somebody who enjoyed having a glass of wine or a bottle of wine, having a gin and tonic, being this sociable, out there type of person, very chatty, not particularly good at sitting quietly ever. How could I be spiritual? How did I fit into that? In my mind, you had to be very softly spoken. You were most likely to have dreadlocks, wear very long, sort of flowing gowns, and probably just have a diet of chickpeas. And me and chickpeas don't get on. So I always had this, like, God, how can I do it? I don't fit into it. It's not my thing. And it took a really long time for me to be able to kind of own it and be okay with, having my crystals on display and talking about the fact that I believe we have many lives, and we've got these lessons to learn, and that when I die I will be back to chat to my daughters regularly as I let them know. All of those things I kept very private and very, I didn't use my oracle cards openly. And then sort of bit by bit and building my tribe, or as I like to call them, my coven of amazing women around me, I've become much bolder about it. And I think that's really important when we are looking to express ourselves, whether that's spiritually or just authentically in any way, making sure that we have a foundation of women around us that get us is just vital, because we need somebody who can hold our hand and be like, you're okay, you're good. I like this version of you, because it can feel really scary sometimes.
Yeah, very scary. In fact, I sit here and I'm holding, you can't really see because of the thing, but I'm here with this heart crystal, holding it because it called out to me yesterday. So I'm just here rubbing it as you're talking and thinking that through too. Like, And tell me the word that you used again instead and finding your people. What was your
My coven, because I
uh-huh.
absolutely love the idea of being a witch, and it sounds much more
Mm-hmm.
fun having a coven rather than just having a group of friends. So we always
Oh,
giggle about that. And again, it's another word that has got, it's deemed bad, and witches are bad. But actually, if you really look into the background, it's a wise woman. Hey, I'll
mm-hmm.
claim that quite happily. So yeah, we do giggle about that, and all our husbands, of course, wind us up about it, and we do cackle and laugh quite a lot. So we probably do sound a little bit like that when we're all together having a glass of wine, I have to say. So, we're being
Yeah.
spiritual with our bottle of wine.
Yeah. Well, that's just such a perfect example of a word that meant wise woman. And then that guy, I can't think of his name, who wrote that horrific book.
Oh, the
Um,
malice what's it, Medulla, yeah.
and then about how to figure out if somebody was a witch. And then they had all of the witch hunts, right? That went on for hundreds of years
Mm-hmm.
of somebody who could actually was a healer.
Yeah.
And it's still after all of this time. And one of my early episodes was Sandra. She talks and she does workshops about letting go of the witch wounds.
Yeah.
Phenomenal work. Um, and so I've taken her workshops because the word still freaks me out,
Yeah.
even though I know that that I am a witch, right?
Yeah.
Like in a positive way, like
Yeah.
not out there doing bad things. Everything's for good. And
Yeah.
so, but that word was
Triggers.
manipulated
Yeah,
into the
absolutely. It was taken.
patriarchy. Yeah.
And it's really like there is a witch wound, and all women carry it. I absolutely am convinced of that, and it shows up very much when women are pitted against each other, and that is completely left over from the days when they did have the witch hunts, and there were people going around, well, if you don't tell me who's in your coven or who the witch is locally, then we'll kill you and your children. You're going to turn on your neighbor and be like, oh well, yeah, actually maybe I did see Mary with a black cat, so maybe it was something to do this division was created. And I think we're still working through that a lot, because what benefits the patriarchy is women being divided. It's women not supporting each other. It's women not having each other's backs, because that creates that, can you imagine anything more scary that for the middle-aged white man than a whole group of women all on the same side, all like striving for the same goal? I mean, that would scare the living crap out of most men, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, right.
But particularly the ones in power at the moment. And that's
Yep.
why everything you see going on at the moment is just that much more horrendous, because there is still division. There are still people who are pitting against each other, who are not, supporting. We just have to talk about the Roe versus Wade, the overturning recently, and I think that's a great example of it, that it's got so caught up and been politicized, and religion has become so involved in it that it's taken away what it's actually about. It's about control, and that's it. Like, it's people trying to control women, and every woman, whatever your views are on abortion, and that is completely, everybody is entitled to that, but nobody's entitled to tell me what to do with my body. And I firmly believe that. And if we could actually find a way to come together, the groundswell of support, and that, how that would change everything. Oh man, it's I hope I get to witness it in my lifetime, but if I don't, then certainly in my children's lifetime. I hope that we all start coming together and realizing we're much, much stronger together than we are separately.
Yeah. The Pink Floyd song, separately we fall. Oh my gosh, I just forgot it. But there's the end of the really well-known Pink Floyd's. Of course they fell, right? Because they couldn't get along. But
Yeah.
Together we rise, divided we fall. And like you, when that overturn came, in fact, I did an episode. Episode 69 talks about it, because there was the rush of emotions that overcame me. And the biggest one was this fear of my right as a woman. Like, this is the first one to take away what has taken so long to happen. And then, so I really hope everybody registers to vote, because here in the US, and then I think we're sending signals too around the world, right? Like, of that, this is how this is how this is freedom. Are we really going back in stage? And I agree for myself. It also meant a control over us. And what happens if us women, there's more women in the US, I know, than men. And
Yeah,
so what if we all came together?
yeah. I totally agree. And that rage, that disbelief, that uncomfortableness with the decision, it's still very raw. I mean, we're recording in
Mhm.
early July, so it's only sort of a week and a half since that all happened, and I can't get my head around it. I struggle. I acquire a stutter when I start to talk about it, because
Mhm.
the words just aren't there. The disbelief and the anger, and yeah, it's truly terrifying that those rights that, you know, our mothers and grandmothers fought tooth and nail for to get are just being whipped away, and we just don't know where it's going to happen next. And I think for me, you know, obviously I don't live in the States, so for a while I was a bit like, well, why does this bother me so much? You know, it's not like I've got any great urge to live there or anything like that at the moment, so why does it impact me? And for me, it was seeing a country that, you know, calls itself the land of the free, that says, you know, everything is based around the independence of individuals to make the choices that they want, to have the right to do whatever they want. If it can change there, if 6 unelected people can impact it there, then, you know, we've got to be vigilant around the world to make sure that that sort of shit doesn't happen anywhere else, because it is too
Mhm.
scary to think what could start unfolding if we don't come together and be brave and be bold and have the conversations that can make people feel deeply uncomfortable and make them challenge their beliefs. And you know, I don't believe that shouting somebody down if they don't agree with you is the way to get them to change their mind. They're just going to dig their heels in. But we have to find a way to be able to have open conversation and agree to disagree. Like, we don't all
Mhm.
have to be best mates in this, but we have to agree that everybody should be entitled to live their life the way that they want to. And yeah, it's an interesting time we're living in. I hope we can look back and be like, well, that was the start of real change.
Mhm.
But
I
it's
I agree, and I thought, this, my vehicle, this Light Up Your Worth podcast is really to help bring people together so that
mm,
you know that you're not alone. You could be in really birth out of when I lived out in Wyoming, I felt very isolated,
mm,
and I found probably the 2 people in this town of 35,000 who had more spiritual versus very hardcore religious beliefs.
mm,
And not that I'm not against religion, at
no,
all. I was raised with it and I believe it. And I believe that if it connects you to your source of your universe, then that's wonderful. And as long as you are doing good with it and not
mhm,
judging and condemning others for their life choices, that it's all good.
yeah,
And so, but I didn't feel like I could share anything, right? Like who could I go talk to about like these beautiful crystals or oracle stuff that's more mainstream.
yeah,
I feel like crystals, oracle cards, talking about past lives or UFOs or, you know, like life coaching, understanding our Reiki. Like Reiki is really, I think, one of the most well-known spiritual
mm,
healing modalities out there. And tapping, right? Like Dwayne
mm,
Dreyer introduced EFT like in the
yeah,
70s.
yeah. And I think you make a really great point there about how much more mainstream everything is now. And even if I just think of my journey, so I hit rock bottom and needed to make changes. God, it was 2011. So however long ago that is, sort of 11, 12 years ago. And I remember it so vividly. I was on the train down to London. I was commuting into London at the time. So I had a 2-hour commute into work and then a 2-hour commute home from work. And I just remember sort of sitting on the train, you know, with it rocking away and nobody talking to anybody, everybody in their own sort of individual space, just thinking, God, is this it? Is this what life is? You know, getting up at some ungodly hour in the morning, driving myself to the train, not talking to anybody on the train, getting to work, working a full day, you know, which was an amazing job, but didn't, you know, I can now look back and know that it didn't really align with the sort of work that I wanted to be doing. and it was just like, is this it? And I just felt myself, I didn't know what, I didn't know how else life could look. And I just felt like I'd just got myself completely stuck. And that was the time where, I realized I needed some support, and was very lucky to, have a very close family friend who was a lay preacher, and a crystal healer, and just this incredible woman who had this way of just helping me. And I attribute, that whole getting out of that pit to her, because she was amazing. And through her, I then did a crystal healing course and found all of these things, but it was still quite, it wasn't mainstream then. It was definitely still a little bit sort of, you didn't mention it to everybody, but then when you did mention it, people would be like, oh, that's quite interesting. I'd like to learn a bit more about it. So there was sort of starting to, those like little sort of tendrils of people being interested was starting to come out. And then, sort of fast forward 12 years, and now, you go into the bookshop, and just a normal, mainstream bookshop, and there'll be a section on all of the things that we want to know about crystals, witches, aromatherapy, lunar cycles, anything that's there. And I love the fact that you can now pick and choose what you want, and what you want your spiritual practice to look like, and what you want, what lights you up. We don't all have to sit on a cushion and om. That's not the only way to do it. We can actually now express ourselves through our spirituality. And I think that's a really exciting time to be a part of, because I agree with your comments about religion. I don't have a problem with it. Personally, it's not for me. I grew up Church of England. I did that the whole way through school, and all of those things. And I have absolutely no problem with it at all, except, like you say, when it gives people the excuse to judge or do harm, then it's a no-go. But what I like, it's very, the thing with religion is, it's like, this is the book, these are the rules, it's one source of truth, that's your lot. And for me, as a little bit of a rebel, that didn't kind of work, because I was like, well, what if I don't just want that one? Maybe I want a bit of this and some of this. If I go out for dinner, I want to have a bit of everybody's dinner. Thank you very much. I don't just want one thing. And I think that's what's exciting about spirituality now, is that there are all of these different things. And you've highlighted many of them on your podcast with all your amazing interviews with just incredible women around the world.
Well, thank you. And these guests that I've had, aren't they phenomenal? I mean, if you're new to the spirituality, and you can learn, because it's growing at a pace as there's more, I don't know if the word acceptance is, but kind of uncovering of them. Like you said, you'll start talking to somebody about something, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, what is that? Oh, well, what does that crystal mean then? Why do you have that big one in the back? Is there a difference? Like, well, what property, or they want to ask the small questions. Well, which one would you recommend if I can't sleep? Right? Like, they start inquiring about it from a whole different perspective. They're curious, which I love when people are curious. They put aside any judgment. But I do still find that, until I started this podcast last year, that I still watch who I talk to.
Yeah, interesting.
I still watch who I talk to, because I don't know what they are. And it seems like I'm more of the I'm not in part of the whole collective. I'm different, right? I'm different. And now that I own it, I have found, like you, I don't like to use the word tribe so much either, because it just feels a little disrespectful to me, for indigenous people. So I like knowing that I have found my community, my people, myself. And so, and knowing that I can freely talk about something. I can very distinguish you. One of my really good friends and we were out boating. So I'm doing the more normal stuff, which I love to be out on a boat and water and have a cold beer and turn me up some, some hip hop or rock and roll, some 80s, hair band rock and roll. I'm in my element, right? I got my pink lipstick on. I'm ready to go. And I remember having a conversation with this new girl that had joined our group, and she started talking about a book. And we started the Celestine Prophecy was like the first spiritual book. Yeah. And I remember reading this book, and it was like my brain went, and there was nobody to talk to about it. And somehow me and this girl lady started talking about it. And, she's still, 20, fast forward 20 years now, and over 20 years. And she's still one of my closest friends, because it's nothing's off topic,
Yeah. Aren't they just the best people who can just text you and be like, geez, there's some funky energy around at the moment. Did you notice the moon last night?
Yeah.
The amount of people, I've got some really close girlfriends who, we will just be like, did you sense that last night? Oh my God, my children didn't sleep. My dog didn't sleep. I didn't sleep. There's got to be something going on with the energy.
It's just, that's so funny, because didn't the planets, like 5 planets, just line up?
Yeah.
And I find out about it like the day after. And I was asking, I forgot who I was asking. Maybe it was in one of my groups. I was like, what in the world is going on? They're like, the 5 planets, Deb. And I'm like, duh, how did I miss this? Right.
Yeah, I'm the same. I always get, my business partner will be like, yeah, did you feel that? It was because of X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh, that explains it, why my mental health was decidedly average yesterday. It's just great to have those people, and it is, you're right, when people start, just be a bit curious about, what's that crystal, or perhaps and I find the one that really gets people is oracle cards. If you bring out some oracle cards with people, wow, they're just like, just pull me a card, what does that mean? And you can just see them.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to like explore it, and it's so cool that it is becoming more normalized, and that we can know that there's more than just us. Like, I just think it would be really depressing to believe that there's nothing more than just this life here and now. The thought that there's so much more out there, and there's this connection that you can have, just just feels really cool. So I'm totally up for exploring it.
I totally dig on that. In fact, in my private Facebook group, I was doing last year, every week, just about, I did card pulls.
Yeah.
And man, you want to build a group. And that wasn't my intention. I was just like wanting to really like help my own intuition, like, and help them, right? Like, okay, I'll do it. They're always right when I pull them. And so I had fairy cards and I had unicorn cards. And in fact, I had pulled cards yesterday with this fairy medicine oracle deck that I have by my friend Maritza Luna Marino, and stunning cards. Stunning cards. And you can't really, it's kind of hard to see with the background. See, it just covers me up. So they were right here, and I was pulling them because I was doing a card pull for my group. And I thought, oh, look how funny. I have them right here. Let's just see what comes up.
Oh,
look at this. This is so funny. So I have to change the filter so you could actually see this card. So you guys, no judgment here on my background. I am doing tax paperwork right now, or, household stuff. So it's a total disaster back there. So no judging. So here's the card I got, which is,
oh, I love it.
Raising consciousness. What are we talking about?
Yeah. So the word conscious and consciousness has come up for me about 15 times in the last 24 hours. Like, honestly, every card I pull, everything I see, so thank you. You're helping me with something else there as well. So,
and here's the crystal that I've been doing, right? And she's heart, and she's actually, I don't remember what she is. And she's okay that I don't remember, because she doesn't want to also be labeled.
Yeah, nice.
Right. So, my crystal experts, and I have to like put a name on them, otherwise I forget a lot of them. I don't know
I'm
why,
the same. I know a few of them, no, I've got.
So here we are talking about the consciousness, the patriarchy, and how it impacts us with spirituality. So when you thought about coming out as a spiritual person, then, you didn't like chickpeas.
Nope.
You weren't gonna meditate. So what did you do? When did you finally decide to go like, okay, I'm just gonna do it? I mean, after you're trained, right, and you had these moments, but what was the first thing? What was those first couple steps that you did to start helping yourself feel more comfortable in owning that there was more.
Yeah. And to be fair, that probably didn't happen till quite a bit later. I kept all of the, well, I mean, even if you were going to therapy or anything like that, you didn't talk about mental health, sort of that 10, 15 years ago. You didn't talk about not being completely okay. That wasn't the done thing. So a lot of what I was doing, I kept quite to myself, and I am naturally quite a private person with things. Until I've got it kind of square in my head, I like to sort of give myself that time to work it out. But it was probably when I came over to New Zealand, so in 2013, I found a beautiful little bookshop that sold, it was just like all of the books, all of the oracle cards, all of the things that I wanted. So I would go in there and I would start to have conversations with basically anyone who would talk to me, because I didn't know loads of people in New Zealand. I came over on my own, so I was desperately talking to anyone. People thought I was a complete mad woman, but I still talk to anyone and everyone. And that was kind of the first bit, was starting to explore what felt right for me with people who were kind of already knew quite a lot about it. That was quite easy. And then as I got more into my coaching, so I was in the corporate world for many years, and then after I had my first daughter, I decided I didn't want to go back into it. I'd kind of achieved all of the stuff that I wanted to do in terms of the level that I wanted to get to, and I wanted to finally do the thing that I'd been called to do, which was to help others, to support others, and kind of be the person walking alongside people as they go on their journey. People have always told me everything that's going on in their lives. I seem to attract that wherever I am, and now I get to have this beautiful career where I get to actually provide that hand holding, and also give them the little push so that they can go a little bit further than they perhaps would on their own. And it was when I stepped into that coaching, and obviously even being a coach myself, I work with coaches all the time. I think that's really important for personal development, as well as my professional development. And I think it was with that starting to be much more confident and comfortable with being me, like actually owning all parts, sort of bringing it kind of back around to what we started on, that wholeness, being okay with all of the parts of me. And spirituality is a part of me. It's a really important part of me. I connect to my angels regularly. I see numbers all the time when I need them. I do meditate, not as often as I want, but that's mainly because trying to fit it in before the children wake up or after they go to sleep, there's a relatively good chance I'll fall asleep. So I try to be more mindful. So when I'm out walking, I sort of spend that time thinking, going inwards and, being connected to the ground that I'm walking in and the space that I'm in. So I make it work for me now, rather than having to subscribe to a specific, I'm going to get up an hour before and I'm going to do my journaling and I'm going to do my meditating. And that cannot work for me with the stage of life I'm at, with, a fairly busy family life. So I fit it in when I can, and that's been really, that's changed it for me and made it easier to have it as part of who I am. And I've got my beautiful office where I can have my crystals and not worry about anyone touching them. And I've got books after book after book about different types of modalities and stories of what people have gone through, and I love to read. But I think it's finding the people around me that I can talk about it comfortably with. And it's being able to say, this is me, this is Ellie. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a coach, I'm hugely outspoken on some things. I'm incredibly fearful of being told off and getting it wrong. I'm afraid of failure, and I'm desperately working through that all the time. And I'm a spiritual being having a human existence, and all of the things I've just talked about are part of that. So it's fundamental to who I am. And I guess now I just can't not own it. It's too big a part of me to hide away. So yeah, it's still, there's still times where I'm like, oh, was that a bit woo?
Yeah. I had one of my folks on, Jilly, had said it's the healing, oh my gosh, I just lost it. The healing arts is what she calls. And I've had several people actually in the healing arts talk about using the word woo, that it even feels a little like disrespectful for those who have owned or honed in on their gifts, right? I mean, and there's a lot of investment with time, resources, learning, practicing, to become really, really a gifted healer,
Mm,
even
very
more
true.
than what we're naturally given. And so, um, but I do find myself using that word too. Like if I was trying to explain spirituality, metaphysical. Oh, you mean like those hippie people? Yeah. When's the last time you heard the word hippie? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember in the '90s, my son going, "Mom, you're kind of hippie-ish," and I was like living in the Santa Cruz County area in California, which is full of hippies.
Right.
And they all had this certain look too of like, what was being spirituality too, like you said, like, what did it look like? What did it feel like to be that person? And I think what I want to do then is now explore. We had talked about, spiritual bypassing or what's toxic spirituality.
Mm,
So I'm
it's
curious to hear your views and your perspective on what does that mean to you?
Yeah, and I hadn't heard the spiritual bypassing word until we chatted earlier today, but that sort of toxic spirituality or toxic positivity, I just think is it doesn't help anybody. Like it's the epitome of just unhelpfulness because actually when you're going through a tough time and when you are doing some of this deep work, and it can be really challenging, you're having to uncover parts of you that you've spent a really long time keeping very hidden from people, and so it can be hard. So to have somebody tell you that, oh, just meditate for a little bit longer, or just breathe and you'll be fine, I just think is really unhelpful, because actually, yeah, it may well help, but if you're not in the right space to be able to do that, it's not helpful. So we've got to be able to be more open about, just, I don't know, being more compassionate, and being more kind with it. We don't have to follow a specific way of doing it. We don't have to do what everybody else does. We have to be able to own what works for us and let other people do the same. It's just like there's no rules around all of this. And sometimes it feels like if you don't do exactly what everybody else is doing, then you're not as spiritual as them, or you're not doing it as well as them. And that just adds that whole load of bloody comparisonitis, which is just really hard
Oh my
work.
gosh. Yeah. Right. Like, the one thing that I have noticed is in doing this podcast is that, you know, um, is that I have a lot of different guests and no two are the same. And I could have 5 people on talking about human design or EFT or tapping or Reiki or energetic healing or sacred soul alignments, right? I I added up how many people in my sacred soul alignments community I've had on, and I'm probably close to 15. And
Wow.
I can tell you, not one of them are anything like the other one. And they all take it into a very specific group of people that they really, the ideal client. I hate to use those marketing words,
Mm,
but they're people of who they're really there to help,
mm,
through their because of their own experiences, and super powerful. So when I think of like spirituality bypassing too, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that when you become spiritual, all of a sudden you're always in a good mood, and and everything is like you're always uplift, like almost Pollyanna on steroids.
yeah.
And I'm a pretty positive person, but
Hmm.
if you had caught me last weekend, I was kind of stewing around in something because I had just up leveled and challenged myself on something about receiving. And I found myself having to work through and, even more important, allow myself to feel
Ooh.
all the
The
stuff it
feelings.
brought up. Right? Not squish them down, but to actually, because I was trying something new and it felt
Mm,
really not so uncomfortable that I wasn't going to do it, because I thought, oh, no problem. I put something together. And then the thought of like, well, now I have to share it. Oh, what if nobody likes it? What if it
yeah.
sucks? What if nobody has enough kahunas to tell me it's not very good?
Yeah. And then how do I deal with it if they do tell me it's not very good?
Right. Or what if they don't want to be part of it?
Yeah.
And, and then I had to go back through the whole thing about why this is called Light Up Your Worth is you are worthy.
Yeah. So true. And I love that you mentioned that sort of Pollyanna-esque expectation of spiritual people, that we're all going to be, laughing and, dancing in the meadows with all the buttercups and the flowers in our hair and all of that sort of stuff. I can tell you 100% that was not me. Like you, the weekend just gone, it got to the end of it and I just looked at my husband. I said, I don't think I've parented very well this weekend. I haven't really liked our children very much. And he just looked at me. And this is where I know that the work that I do is slowly getting through to him. He said, well, just tell me one thing you're grateful for with both children. And I was like, damn you. Okay, fine. I quite like this. So it was great. And I'm really grateful for him doing that, because it brought that light back and it reminded me. And the gratitude, I think, for me is the most powerful thing that we can have at all times. Like, we don't need to be in a specific space for it. We don't have to be anywhere. We don't need any, equipment. We can actually just practice gratitude. And that's been the game changer for me generally in life. But you're right, there is this expectation, but life is hard. Being a human is hard. Like, we have to deal with other people. We have to deal with other people's thoughts and shit. And we have to try really hard not to take that on ourselves, because we're so conditioned to put everybody else's thoughts and ideas and needs ahead of our own, that unless you are conscious about the way you're showing up, you're conscious of your thoughts and what is going through, you're conscious of your feelings and letting yourself feel them, like, it is really easy to get very bogged down with everything. So I love that you mentioned the feelings. That is one of my favorite things to dive into, the feeling stuff, and how many people have been told emotions are bad, feelings are bad, you certainly shouldn't share them with other people. Good God, nobody wants to know how you're really feeling.
Yeah.
And it's
I'm just fine.
I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm fine.
Fine.
It's such a bullshit answer. If anyone ever says to me they're fine, I'm like, okay, and now can I have the truth? Because people only say they're fine when they're not.
Yeah.
It's just, we have to feel the feelings, but that's, again, it goes back to, it's unknown, it's scary. We don't know what's going to come up if we let that happen, because we haven't done it before. So it's having that support and having those people to help guide you and hold your hand when you're learning to let the feelings come up, because they can be big. But anyone listening who struggles with feeling the feelings, just trust that it's never going to be bigger than you can handle. Like, it will never be more than you can handle. So let it come up. I always describe them like a wave. You sort of, it starts to roll in and it comes up and it crests and it feels really big. And then as quickly as it's got to the top, it crashes down and it rolls up the beach and it rolls away again. And I think if we can start to let ourselves feel the feelings, feel our emotions like that, they go so much quicker. You try and block it down, you try and hold that wave back, man, that's a lot of energy that's being taken into, just no good.
Right. Like, don't you feel like when you start having those and you're trying to condense it, like I think of like a balloon, like a water balloon, right? You start pressing on it, it just moves over. We can suppress it in our body, or if we don't compress it in our body, or as a small t or big T trauma, is that then it comes out at the most inappropriate. Like, not that there's a bad time, but sometimes there really is like a better time to feel emotions, like maybe not so much if you're like in a meeting with your boss. Probably not a good time to like lose your shit, like over being triggered over something that had nothing to do with anything.
And I think that's a really great point you make there, and that kind of leads into that shadow quite nicely. And I've always loved the work of Debbie Ford. We talk about the books that got us on our journey. The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which has got such a sort of crazy name for what is actually a really, really, like, anyone could read it, and anyone who, even if you're not spiritual, you would still get so much out of it. But I always thought the name was a little bit wasn't quite right for it, but it's such a good book. And she talks about our shadow and how, the duality of life. There is always good and bad. There is always dark and light. There is always all of these things. And the more we suppress what we perceive as bad, and the darker it kind of gets. And it comes out in extremes, because it's going to come out. Whatever you have got hidden in your shadow is going to come out. It cannot stay hidden forever. And if you don't every now and then look in the bag and see what's lurking around and just sort of, do a little bit of work on it, it's going to come out at tens. And, the example that I always use is, bossiness is one of my shadow things. We're not meant to be bossy. Bossiness at a 10 is really not very nice. A lot of people don't like bossy at a 10, as I have found. But bossy at a 2 or a 3 is actually a really helpful trait. It gets stuff done. It gets people moving. It gets things working in the right direction. So if I can manage my shadow bossiness, if I can look at it every now and then, if I can just check in, how's that going at the moment? Is there anything that's being triggered by it? Is it feeling a bit threatened? Is it feeling not great? Okay, well, perhaps we'll do a bit of work. I can manage it at a 2 or a 3, and it's actually going to be really helpful to me. A lot of our shadow is really helpful when it's on the right level. It's just when it comes out in those extremes, you're like, oh, that wasn't great.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of mine too. I have to watch my bossy and have to manage it. And I find that there's been a lot of great things, but it has served me when it's in a more normal range, 5, 6, even 7, because I was the oldest and my mom worked outside the home, and there was homework to get done, and there was, dinner to start. You had to do your laundry, like there was just things that had to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to work your way through a corporate environment, they actually encourage, I think, the bossy in a lot of places. But you had to get stuff done. You had to be able to execute. And somehow I think that comes along with that bossy, the other side of it, of, like, why is that being able to speak up? I bet you were that person too in that environment. If you're in a team meeting and there's the white elephant in the room, you asked that question, didn't you?
I did, and I didn't. Like, it would depend how comfortable I felt. I worked in a very male dominated, I was in sport for 12, 13 years, and I was quite often the only female at the table, and the expectation that I would take minutes and make coffee got a little bit old quite quickly. But there was definitely, so it would depend on who was in that meeting. But I did always find that once I'd got a lay of the land, like, I've always enjoyed studying people and understanding what makes people tick, because I think that's just, I think it's really interesting. And I remember in one of the jobs that I had a couple of men that I reported into. One person, he just wanted to be given a solution. You went to him with something, he wanted you to come back with a solution, he would sign off on it, you'd get it done easy. Another one wanted to think it was his idea. So you'd have to go and, drip a few ideas and, let him sort of mull that over, and then a bit more. And eventually he would come around and be like, oh, I've been thinking that we should do this. And you're like, oh, great, you finally got there. But you picked up the breadcrumbs and sorted it out. But it was like learning that, like starting to allow myself to use that intuition, that understanding of people. That was when I was able to start to stand up and say a bit more in those meetings when there was something that needed to be said, because I was able to get it at the right tone. And I think as a woman standing up and saying things, you have to get it in the right tone at the moment, because she's a bit forthright, she's a bit bossy, she speaks her mind, it's not said in a good way. It's it's, aren't you meant to be nice and quiet and gentle and kind? Well, yeah, I can be, but I can also kick your ass at the end of the day. So which is going to get stuff done right now?
Right. Yeah, it's that's really quite powerful, the way you outlined that. Once you get the lay of the land, you're trying to figure out who's who.
And that's where women have got the advantage. Like, women have the advantage because it's so much easier for us to do than men, like, because it's not something that sorry, I'm going to be interrupted by my 5-year-old now. Ems, can I come in 1 minute, please? Sorry. when we have the superpower, we're able to do all of this. So it's a really big sorry, I'm so sorry, my children have literally just walked into my office.
Wait.
Life in duality, right?
Absolutely. Like we can have really grown-up conversations, and there will always be small people about as well. So
yeah, that's right.
They have now just put, so apologies for that. And sorry, they were on strict instructions not to come in. But you know what that means with children. I'm going to do the exact opposite. So I do think women have that superpower. So let's use it. Let's, be able to read the room as well as we can. Let's tap into our intuitive knowing and use that to our advantage, because like I said, it's much easier for us than it is for a lot of men.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, I love that. I know I frequently would do that, especially now. I can walk in and go, "Ooh, what's going on here?" Like you could feel the stuckness of the energy, or there must have been conflict. And sometimes you almost want to walk around with some sage, or
yeah, exactly.
Can we like sage this conference room,
or with some, just start clapping in all the corners.
Yeah. And they'd be all, what are you doing?
Yeah, but just moving some energy.
Oh yeah, hang on, I'm gonna like clear this with my crystal. And set the intentions, or throw a little salt in all the corners, or
yeah. Wouldn't that be great when you go into a meeting, rather than all the tea and coffee being set up, you've got your bit of sage set up, you've got your crystals, you've got your little tinglings to use.
Yes.
It would just be gold.
Yeah, that's so funny. Oh my gosh, that is just so true, right? Like yeah, we got everything all set up. Are we ready to go? Can we, Oh, wouldn't that be lovely when that happens? There's organizations now where they do that. I mean,
yeah,
I'd like somebody to tell us where they're at, but
yeah. Again, let's talk about it,
right?
Let's find out where they're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so great. Actually, what I thought was so beautiful about your daughters joining you, right, is that it actually goes back to our whole conversation, right? Like, these are the rules. Don't come in, don't do this. And then here we are, we're both like compassionate. I mean, doesn't bother me that they walked in, sometimes my dog barks and doesn't, it is, she lives here, and sometimes people come home and they make her bark. I mean, I'm not comparing my dog to your kids, or everybody
she's
listening.
Probably way easier to deal with than my children.
Mine are raised, but definitely. And but what's so beautiful is that they're able to come in, and then they're going to pick up on this energy of what we're doing, what you are out there doing to change the world so that it is a kinder, better place for them to step into it. And sometimes, it's, we got to break the rules to be able to do that, right? What's that famous quote about women who make history?
Boring women don't make history, or well-behaved women don't make history. Something like that.
Yeah.
I've actually got that up on my wall in my bedroom.
Yeah. Well-behaved women don't make history.
Yeah.
And isn't that the truth, right? Like what we have to go through. And so I think that's a really good segue for why we started this conversation, and why it's so important that as women, if we come together, there's more women on this planet Earth. Mother Earth is full of women.
Mother Earth.
Mother Earth.
Mother Earth. Right? Yep. Yeah. It's so true. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could stop comparing ourselves to, worrying about our weight, worrying about what we look like, comparing it, like such unimportant things in the whole scheme of it. And we were actually able to just focus on the stuff that matters. And it doesn't have to be. And I think one of the challenges that I have sometimes is that I want the world to be different. And I'm like, well, how am I going to do that in my little office in Lincoln, in Christchurch? How am I going to make that change? And it's remembering that actually everything you do, if you're doing it with the intention that you want things to be better and you want things to be different, every person you then touch takes that on and takes it out a little bit further. And it's that ripple effect. It has to start somewhere. And even if it's just a little tiny thing, you know, my two daughters, we talk a lot about feelings. I think they're probably slightly more aware of their feelings and have more emotional language than possibly my darling husband. And that's totally fine because we're working on it. But, you know, my daughter can tell me how she's feeling, and she will explain why it is and where it's coming from. And for that to be happening with kids, it is going to change. It is that this whole, you know, oppressed space that we're in at the moment is going to change. You just have to look at these incredible young women coming through in their 20s, in their teens, who are so willing to stand up and say, no, screw that. We're not having it the way it's always been. We're not taking that as standard and normal. We're going to change it. And I think that's amazing. And if there's any little part I can be in that, you know, in the change in the world, then count me up. Get me a t-shirt. I'm on board.
Right. Yeah. Where's the t-shirt? But I want it cute and frilly. So,
Yeah.
you know, because
Sparkles.
today with ours, I'm wearing sparkles tonight.
I love it.
Because it's nighttime here in the US.
Yeah.
And but I'm wearing sparkles. I've never worn this shirt ever. And I saved it. And today it just felt like it was a sparkly kind of day. And I think that's what's so beautiful, right? Is that we can all appreciate that beautifulness, that the phenomenal woman in all of us. And the part that owning all parts of ourselves and letting it show, the shadow work that you do with people, that is raising the vibration, right? When two or more people come together with light,
yeah,
we're sending out those ripples effect. And I just appreciate everything that you're doing, and even your own podcast that you have too. So I wanted to, you know, when you want to share what your podcast is all about too.
Yep. So our podcast is called She Is Wise, and I do it with my business partner Erin, who is another light worker. She's just incredible. She's a psychic medium, spiritual healer, and just all those wonderful things. And we basically have the bigger, braver, bolder conversations that we think, you know, women want to be having, but perhaps don't necessarily know where to start. So we start them and hope that people listening will carry them on. So that's something that we enjoy putting together. We never quite know where they're going to go, and sometimes, yep, we finish them, go, wow, wasn't expecting that. So yeah. But enjoy it, and isn't it so great that there are these platforms now that we can, you know, share what we're thinking. And what you said earlier about everybody, you know, focusing, you could have 15 people who do the same thing and everyone will come at it slightly differently. I just really want to acknowledge that, because we can all be doing, you know, the same thing or offering the same service, and yet everybody has a uniqueness and a beauty to them that is different to the person next door to them. And if we can start to embrace that, and if we can start to own that and let that shine, everybody is going to have success. We're going to grow the whole pie, not just individual slices. Everything is going to get bigger and we're going to have more success. And for me, that's what's going to start changing the world. If we can collaborate, come together, but not worry about, you know, we could be doing the same thing, but the way you do it and the way I do it, totally different. And there's plenty for everybody. So I just really want to acknowledge that you said that, because I think it's really important that we remember it. We're all unique in our genius, and like, let's own that and shout it from the rooftops and not worry about, you know, oh, she's showing off over there, telling us how great she is. Bugger off. I am great. Deal with it.
You are great. You are worthy. Yeah. And you are shining your light, right? And by, you know, shining your light, you're owning your worth, and that allows others, like Marianne Williams says, right? Like, who are you not to be, right? Don't dim your light, right? Shine your light. And, you know, all of the phenomenal healers, if anything, through all the conversations on every single podcast that I've had, is that they're all thread through spiritual perspectives. And they're all different. There's not two people that I've had on ever.
Yeah.
And my conversation with each of them is very different, depending on where they are, even on their own journey and their comfortableness of speaking up. You know, maybe they're on a guest, but maybe they're not so comfortable yet with stepping into that part of themselves. It's okay. We're all on the spectrum, and we all agree to come here to help where we are. So I am so grateful that you have opened that space for
Thank
She Is
you.
Wise, and to have those conversations. And so we'll include that in the show notes as well. And I highly want people to go and support it and subscribe and start carrying on those conversations. I think now is even more important with the changes with the Supreme Court here in the US, right? And
Yeah.
that ripple effect that hopefully, we're going to pause and we're going to send it back with love, because women are going to come together.
Yeah. Yeah. If they, yeah, they've got to, that there isn't an opportunity to not now, like it has to change. But thank you so much for having me. I've so enjoyed our conversation, and I have to say I love what you do. I love the people that you have interviewed. I love your approach to it, and just keep it up because it's fantastic. And yeah, very grateful for being here today.
Yeah. And I also wanted to see, how can people reach you?
Okay, so check out our website at www.awakeningthewisewoman.com. If you want to have a look at the sort of work we do, there's a page all about me, and you can book in for a call, and we can have a chat. If there's anything that's coming up for you at the moment that you could just do with having a chat with somebody else and hear a different perspective, or have space to talk about it, then I offer free calls to anyone who wants that. So just get in touch, and I would love to connect with anyone listening.
Oh, thank you. I love that you have those free calls too, for people to just go figure out, is she one of my people?
Absolutely. And there's no pressure on it. It's like at the end of it, you can take what we've talked about and do whatever you want with it. But I love talking to people. I have many words, in case you hadn't noticed.
Yeah.
And honestly, my husband's really grateful, because it means that I don't have to like spend them all on him in the evening. So
Yeah.
you'll be doing the whole family a favor.
Oh my gosh. Well, sending you so much love across, over to New Zealand, from the States. And thank you so much for joining me. I just feel so grateful. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.